everyone. Welcome to Startup Financials. This is a topic that is one of those things, as I've worked with entrepreneurs who are fundraising. This is one of those things where people tend to have a lot of challenges, and with so many startups, I mean, I think a lot of us are participating in a variety of demo days, whether we're just listening or on panels or pitching, as I imagine a lot of you are. One of the things I've seen pretty consistently over the last few months with a lot of the online events is people have questions about how to present their panels, how to present their financials, excuse me. And of course, there are different contexts for that. Sometimes you're talking about, okay, what to cover in a 4-minute pitch, which is challenging enough, right? You have to cover everything about your business in 4 minutes. Super challenging. And sometimes they're asking questions about, okay, you know, I've pitched, I've got my, you know, I've had my first meeting with my investor. Now here's the second one. This is the big meeting. You know, this is where we really need to dig in deep. What should I do? And then, of course, there's board meetings, preparing for investor diligence, and all sorts of things. So we're going to touch on a lot in what's a short amount of time and do our best to answer all your questions. Let me quickly orient you to this fabulous panel that is joining us today as our guide. Angela Jackson is co-founder and managing director and general partner of the Portland Seed Fund. She's also a member of the board of directors of the Angel Capital Association, and she's a very busy lady. She's also executive director for industry and entrepreneurial engagement for Portland State University. And we have our other investor on the panel today is Stephen Forte. Stephen is a partner with Fresco Capital and a venture advisor to us at Runway Innovation Hub. Fresco has offices locally in Silicon Valley, as well as offices in Hong Kong and Tokyo. So that means they invest globally. And they invest in startups at the intersection of people and technology, with the goal to support an empowered workforce, holistic wellness, and sustainable loops. Steve might be able to tell us what sustainable loops means. And he's also a founder himself, having founded several startups, many of which have been acquired. And last but not least, we have Fabien Beckers. So Fabien is a founder and former CEO of Arteris, where he founded the company and grew it over 9 years. And Arteris is pioneered cloud-based AI for healthcare imaging. This company, 2019 was a big year for the company. They were a top 10 100 AI company globally, named by CB Insights. And also in 2019, they were in Fast Company's top 50 of the world's most innovative companies, coming in second in the healthcare category. And important for the context of this conversation, over that 9-year period, Fabien, as CEO, raised more than $70 million from both venture, angel, and corporate investors. And prior to Arteris, Fabien founded and was CEO of Chameleon, a digital marketing agency. Background at Stanford Graduate School of Business and University of Cambridge Physics PhD with the Quantum Matter Lab. So we have a lot of smart folks on the call today. And I also wanted to mention that a few logistical points. My colleague from Runway, Manny Oriana, will be monitoring the Q&A line. So if you have any questions that you want to ask the panel, please do put those in the Q&A line, and then we will do our best to answer those during the event. And if not, we'll try to do that afterwards. We are recording this event, and we're going to send that to everybody who registered afterwards, because I think there's a lot of information that's going to come out, and I'm thinking that as you're applying this to your own financials, there may well be some things that you'll want to mention, to want to refer back to. Let's see, so I hit some of the logistics. I will quickly just give you a bit of background about myself. I am CEO of Runway Innovation Hub. We are San Francisco based in the Twitter building, and provide workspace, corporate innovation, and event services to a global community of tech startups and enterprises. One of the things that we really focus on is to curate a really dynamic community for tech startups and anybody who wants to engage with tech startups. So that's our focus. We actually have co-working. That's only part of our business. It's a particularly interesting part these days. So we have this very socially distanced co-working space at the moment that's gorgeous. And lots of, distance between desks. So that was an interesting process to go through. Happy to talk to anybody if they want to figure out, can you really work in a co-working space right now? And the answer is yes, you can, with some caveats. So let me tell you a little bit about how we're going to spend our time together. So in a minute, we're going to launch a Zoom poll, and we just have 3 questions about this topic, just to get a sense of where the audience is, what's your level of confidence, and areas where you might need more help as it relates to startup financials. And then we'll be looking at the answers towards the end of the session. And so, Manny, why don't you go ahead and launch that poll? And then, yeah, so we just have 3 questions here.
I'm not allowed to vote.
You're not allowed to vote? No, sorry, Steve. And so let's kick off the discussion. First, Angela and Steve, can each of you give me your answer for what should someone understand that an essential financial forecast covers for an early stage startup? Steve, why don't you go first?
Sure, happy to. So is this, for your question, is it really more like like before you've made the investment, like not at the board of directors level?
Yes.
Like, so,
yeah.
So for an early stage startup, we've seen everything. We've been in the business of investing in early stage startups for almost a decade. So if I could say I've seen everything. I've seen everything from nothing to, 150-page audited report. And neither of those are good. You need something kind of in the middle. And in essence, one of the things I like to look at is, as a compromise there would be about a 3-year pro forma. And reality is you only care about 3 things in that pro forma. What is your revenue, projections, like for, you do this quarterly at that stage. You don't have to go like on a monthly or even annual if you want to go that far out. And what's your expense against those projections, and a loose categorization of what those 2 are. So is it recurring revenue? Is it non-recurring revenue? If you have projected out in your business model and your business plan, new markets, like we're going to go do the US first, then go to India, right? So tell me the assumptions, like I'd like to see that broken out, right? But again, very high level, really just revenue and expense for those markets, right? In the categories of going into those markets. If you're doing new products, right? If you're a SaaS business and you're going to produce something with X, and then you're going to go produce also consulting in year 2 or some, on top of it, like implementation, whatever that is, right? Break those out. That's actually really important, because once a startup was pitching me with this great revenue, and it was really just them consulting. right? They were generating like $1 million a year consulting. And so they said, here we are, $1 million in year one. And I'm like, wait, but what's the revenue for your product that you're pitching me on? And they go, 0. And I go, well, why don't you guys just stick to the consulting thing? Because it seems to be working for you, right? So the reality of this situation is, us VCs know and us investors know that you're making this up as you go along, right? So all you really have to do, so don't try to fool us, right? Instead, just anchor it in reality, right? Of course we want to see the hockey stick up and to the right. I want you to grow 4 million X in year 2, but we also know you're not going to do it. Right? If I see it, I'm going to call BS on it, right? And really start explaining it to you. So again, anchor it in reality and let's see, where that lands. And then lastly, something that everyone seems to forget, which is probably more important, I want to see your assumptions around your customer acquisition costs. So, and especially if you're in any form of SaaS business, like this should be even before any form of pro forma. What is your CAC? And what are the assumptions behind that? How's that going to grow? How's that going to increase, decrease over the years? And then what's your lifetime value? And then what's your CAC LTV, ratio, right? And just how that evolves over time and how you're going to improve it when you're looking at the gates of your funnel and all that type of stuff. So that's really what we're looking for at the early stage. So we don't necessarily, you don't need to go out and start putting together a P&L and all that kind of stuff, right? Like that's for later, right? That's after you take some money and start to get some sales, and you don't even need that immediately after you raise your seed round. Like that's when you start to get ready for more your Series A. I'll stop there and let Angela weigh in, and then kind of
That's great.
Stephen, I agree with all that you said. I will maybe flavor this in a little different direction. Just from my experience, we are investing in very early stage companies. So Portland Seed Fund is an institutional investor, actually the most active investor in Oregon, according to CB Insights. So we've done about 110 deals to date, and they aren't all in Oregon. In fact, our best performing company is in Seattle in Argentina, and it's Auth0. Some of you developers may have heard of Auth0. Some of you investors probably have, because they're killing it, and it's a unicorn. And we got into that deal like classic us with a $50,000 investment. So they don't all go like that, by the way. But investors, future investors. But anyway, we are sector agnostic, and we therefore don't just invest in tech. We do have some consumer deals, some energy, health. We had one therapeutics company. They all behave slightly differently, and we would expect slightly different financials depending on the core business. So here's what I'm going to assume I'm speaking mostly to startup CEOs here, who are probably, their core skill set probably is not the finances. This is something you will ultimately delegate, but I think it's really important for a CEO to understand that if they divest control or understanding of their financials, they're divesting understanding and control of their business eventually. So even though you will cause this thing to happen over time, at the beginning, I think you need to understand on a real cellular level, on the very basic, we spend this much to produce this much. And if we spend a little more, it scales or it doesn't scale. And then at what points is it strategic to put in money to get more scale? And that's not, you don't need a financial person to tell you that. That is just the metabolism of the business you're trying to build, okay? And I repeat, the founder CEO who doesn't understand that their control over the business is absolutely informed by their ability to understand those basic principles is at risk. So at least understand that. If you're writing it down in a notebook and you still don't understand it, it's fine. You're getting a feel for how these things get put together. That's the most important. I like to see people do top down and bottom up. In other words, when they're doing forecasts, you're going to get a lot of macro data from Gartner or market data. And that's going to tell you your TAM and your SAM and your SOM and what part. And you're going to tell me how much of that market. And you're probably going to say, if we just got 1%, then ... right? I know, Stephen, you probably get sick of hearing that too, right? But I also want to see, okay, let's say that's true. Flip it. Now show me from the bottom up, from the ground up to get there. Who's your first ask? Why are you going to get them? How are you going to get them? What are they good for when? We see in Oregon, a lot of people put Nike down on a customer list or Intel. Well, even if that's true, they're often getting one super tiny trial worth almost no dollar. It's a brand, it's a logo, but it doesn't compute yet. People are really doing small trials and such. So I want to see your top down somehow coalesce with your bottom up, at least on a theoretical sense. And as Stephen said, down the road, we can get really granular with a good controller and good financials. And we'll talk about that more later when we talk about the board.
Great. So, so Fabien, Angela was talking about, the founding CEO. Now you had run a business before, and you founded your company, but it was not sort of a technology-based company, even though you obviously that was part of your work, I'm sure, in your digital marketing agency. But go back in a time machine to when you were starting your company and, starting to raise your seed funding. Just as a disclosure for everybody, I'm an advisor to Fabien's company, but it goes back to when the company was still part of StartX at Stanford. And so Fabien, what were some of the things that you were, that were part of your approach initially as you were starting, again, pre-revenue, seed stage, to get your arms around your financials? And how did that change? Just think about that initial seed round stage. Let's keep it really early for those folks on the event here.
Yeah, no, thank you, Sandy, for having me. And it's a very interesting topic. And it seems a long time ago, but it's not that long ago. And I still remember very much that phase, actually. I think I really second a lot of what Stephen and Angela said about the fact that at the very early stage, when you really are beginning around the idea or maybe a first or early proof of concept, I think really anchoring on common sense, I think is really important. Yeah, you can make it very complex and drive P&L and so forth, but common sense, it should be really the driver of everything. And the second piece, I think that was very helpful to me, I think to be successful at fundraising, is really thinking about fundraising and financials as a way to really kind of articulate your story and what is the narrative that you're trying to do through the deck. And really what really going to be the first part of those financials is really a set of assumptions, because if you are in the early stage part of your company or business, you really have a lot of unknowns and there's a lot of things you really don't know yet. And so I think what is interesting is to say, well, let's use my financials as a way to really drive my assumption, understand what you have a lot of error bars on, and what am I going to learn over the time of what Angela was mentioning, what is your multiplier, what are your risks that are going to really, and also back to what Stephen's saying on your SaaS metrics, because really thinking about your company initially is really a learning curve, isn't it? You're just learning and de-risking a lot of things. And so your financial can really help crystallize those assumptions, think through them a lot actually, and debate them, and then see where going to be the impact on your business, understand the mechanics of your business. And that's the kind of conversation you want to have with investors about, this is what we're thinking in terms of, this is where we think it's going, these are the risks, this is what we want to learn initially. And I think that's what you want to reflect more than anything else.
So from these three comments so far, I mean, I think, one of the reasons why this topic can be so challenging for an early stage founder is because it sort of requires you to articulate what you don't yet know. Right? Because as to Angela's point, you have to really understand your financials, but it's really clearly laying out, these are our assumptions, and these are the things that are risks and or we do not yet know the answers to these things related to the assumptions, right? Steve, and are you comfortable when an entrepreneur says, shares what they don't yet know? Do you expect them to have all the answers early on?
Quite frankly, if they came to us and claimed to have all the answers, I would be more skeptical, right? Because you have to have that organizational skills and kind of the attention to detail to build out the financials, but then you have to go build in the simple fact that you don't know what's going to come. And I don't mean such, unpredictable events like COVID, right? Like, it's almost impossible to predict something like that, or even accommodate for something that's literally once a century. But at the same time, what are these systemic risks that we're facing? And then what are these areas that, that could just really kind of, make things go sideways? So we're actually very comfortable that there's a lot of gaps. And that's, again, that's like one of the reasons why, I'm just really looking for a pro forma that is, again, as to reiterate with Fabien, right, anchored in reality, right? But then more importantly, just is kind of just high level based upon assumptions, knowing those assumptions are going to, going to change. And very importantly, what are your assumptions around your financing, for subsequent rounds, right? To accommodate that, right? So the best founder comes to me and says, well, here's my 2 to 3 year kind of window, what I think my revenue will be, what I think it's going to cost me to get there. Here's my unit economics, as Angela was talking about. Here's my LTV CAC, which I've mentioned recently. And, I think this will get me to a Series A in 18 months, but, here's what it will look like in a bad scenario, like, right? And then I'll probably have to do a seed extension or another round. I won't be ready for a Series A, right? Like, to me, that kind of frank conversation with those unknowns baked in is far better than if they just go, here's what it's going to be. Here's the exact plan. And in month 14, we're going to spend, $482,060 on pencils or whatever it is,
Okay, great. Thank you. So let's talk about how to best sort of communicate your financials at a couple different stages in the fundraising process, because, and let's talk about it in the context of, today where we're doing this online also. So one of those stages in the process is participating in an online pitch event where a startup has 4 minutes typically to capture your attention about their company. At that stage, with respect to financials, Angela, what are you typically expecting to see?
Yeah, I understand these are very constrained environments in which to pitch. And that 4 minute pitch used to be 10 minutes. And I would say even now 4 minutes might be long. And, the universal attention span is getting shorter and shorter. So, for sure, we don't expect to see full on financials. And in fact, it's distracting because you can't typically see. A lot of times people will put up a spreadsheet and you just can't see it. You couldn't see it on the screen at the demo day, and you can't see it on the screen on Zoom either. So again, knowing enough about your business to know what are the essential drivers. And then if you have the skills, create an infographic around that. And if you don't, I think it's an investment well made, just to get a couple of very simple slides that show some of your basic revenue, expense, and overtime assumptions. I like the ones that do show, as Stephen referenced, anticipated date of other capital infusions, and then what that does for the business. As an early stage investor, I need to know how much capital this company thinks it's going to need to raise over time to know if it's going to end up being a good deal for me. And I fully understand that things may change, and we're not going to hold anyone to something they said. No one's going to say, oh yeah, March 14th, I believe you said in 3 years it was going to be a Series A and it was a Series C, and I want to talk to you about that. No one's going to do that. It is this information we seek really just to verify that the thinking is sound, that we're simpatico, and that we can have a long-term relationship together, and that there's a possible successful business opportunity together. I think another thing to point out is a lot of really great businesses don't understand what it means to take on investment. And I think they think it's more of a grant or a loan or a you go kid, here you go. And it's not. You do give up a lot when you take on investment. So that goes back to really control your business. You have to understand your finances. You may be in a great business that really doesn't need to raise money. And then why would you do that just to get another monkey on your back if you actually didn't need to? So I can tell by looking, again, we do a lot of this. We look at a lot of business plans. I can tell by looking at a couple just a few seconds if it's a scalable business or not. I mean, at least whether we should go deeper to find out if it is. And a lot of that has to do with, does the headcount, does the output scale with less headcount or not? I mean, a service business generally doesn't, unless there's a unique product or technology behind it, right? It's like, we have to service more customers. We need more people to service those customers. Well, that's a nice lifestyle business for somebody, but unlikely a venture investor would invest without that delta increasing over time. And those are the kinds of things you actually can convey in a 4-minute, whatever presentation. Just avoid the eye chart and invest in an infographic or two.
Great. Steve?
Yes, I couldn't agree more. The only reason you would ever put like the Excel spreadsheet up on the, in a demo day pitch or one of those short pitches is just to show you've done the work. But, we trust you on that, right? In that respect. One thing I would add is I think that in the short form pitches, the goal of them is to get a deeper meeting, right? So a lot of businesses are actually are either not going to be scalable, or they, like, the reasons why we wouldn't invest is the business itself we don't believe is going to be scalable, or it should even be venture funded in the first place, like a dog walking company or something, right? Because how do you scale that with technology, right? But I digress. But the way to find that out, right? The way to find that out is typically with one metric, right? To get the investor enticed, right? So you can basically just show this one metric on a slide, right? Whether it's going to be a unit economic metric, it's typically a ratio. Great place to look for this is like back in the day we used to call it the one metric that matters, right? You can just go and Google some of those and choose the right one. One of those metrics that's either going to be something that's already you're doing, or it's something you're going to do, and then your projection of it would be like, example, one of these metrics for the airlines, it's revenue per seat per mile flown, right? Which is probably 0 right now, but you understand the point, right? So yeah. There's typically some type of financial ratio metric. Again, if you're SaaS, the metric would be something like, CAC LTV ratio and payback period, right? Like Salesforce was a 3x in 9 months, right? When they went public, right? Like, go look at other comparables and give a metric that's similar to something like that. And that's how, as Angela said, we can kind of in our head see pretty quickly by looking at that metric. 1, you've thought through this, and then 2, we think this is scalable, and 3, ooh, that's exciting. Let's talk, right? And that's when you go into the deeper dive.
Yeah. So before I go to Fabien, I want to follow up on something that I hear again for early stage entrepreneurs, pretty commonly, and let's sort of just cut through, to some straight talk on this, because as entrepreneurs, they're developing their financials, they're being very conservative, and their forecast for how much revenue their business can make in, let's say, 5 years is $9 million or $19 million. And you sort of say, okay, that may not be enough of an upside potentially for an investor. What is that number realistically? What sort of threshold should an entrepreneur be looking at as part of their forecast if they're going to go down the fundraising, raising other people's money path?
I mean, I'll start. I think that is low for a revenue-based exit, right? For 5 years. On the other hand, if that entrepreneur can convince us that, oh, this isn't a market that's going to buy on revenue multiple, this is going to be whatever else. And if they can make the case for that, we're building something that is so hard to build that this is a very strategic buy. They're not even going to care about the revenue. If they can convince us of that in other parts of the pitch, then the revenue is less important. This all goes back to, again, the fundamentals of, you have to know what galaxy you're in to understand you know, what sort of ship you want to be in and who's going to pay attention to you out there. Energy deals look really different than SaaS deals. The kind of revenue to expect after 5 years is going to look real different. I'll give an example from the brands that we have invested in. You know, the reason we do those deals is not for early revenue. Those are very hard companies to build for the first 10 years. Very hard. But if you look at iconic brands, pick any, let's just say Patagonia, you know, they take a lot more than 10 years to build, and investors don't get interested on the early revenues. In fact, I know Patagonia and others, many of them are on the brink of death many times because it's such a hard slog. But once they become embedded in the customer and they have brand value, those who understand that revenue and like it will buy that because they know it's so hard to build that.
Great. Steve, anything to add?
Yeah, the one thing I'll add to that is something Angela touched on briefly, which is, you know, sometimes the revenue doesn't matter when it comes from as an investor, we care about the exit. So we care about what is the company's valuation at the time of an exit, or we wouldn't be an investor, right? I mean, you know, we invest X amount of dollars and we expect X amount of return, right? You know, some multiple, you know, 3X, 5X, 10X, like whatever it is, depending on the stage. And as Angela said, is some of the exit scenarios don't necessarily involve, you know, like an 80% profit margin and $100 million in revenue. Some will, right? So so I guess the answer to your question, Sandy, is the classic example when you ask a database tuning professional, you know, it depends, right? So it truly depends on the type of business. So I think a great example in our portfolio, so some of our companies making the hurdle to a Series A, we've had some companies run up to a Series A with just totally anemic revenue, you know, like, you know, low six digit revenue, you know, like maybe 500K in revenue or something, all, you know, but in essence, growing in a hot market with great entrepreneurs, with a great, et cetera, right? Then we had other companies which were just equally as impressive companies. So we have other companies that were equally as impressive as the team, but they were in a very crowded space where there's traditionally a lot of churn. And it wasn't until they hit like the $5 million, you know, ARR rate where did the Series A door kind of open for them, right? You know, so I've cautioned my entrepreneurs several times in the past, like, you know, they just thought there was like this magic number, like that unlocks a funding round, right? You know, so for, you know, particularly if you've raised some seed money and you're going for the Series A, they think it's, oh, like, you know, 1 to 2 million in ARR and I automatically qualify for a Series A. And I actually had one of my very smart CEOs sit down and tell me that over coffee once. I'm like, no, it doesn't work that way. And they went down the road to acquire another company just to goose up that ARR because they thought it was like this magic number that unlocked it, right? And similar to the folks I was advising, you know, when I mentioned to you, right, you know, earlier, right, when I said, you know, they had this $1 million of consulting revenue because they just thought, oh, we just do all this revenue and it's going to lock the seed round. But I'm like, I don't care about your non-recurring revenue. You know, VCs care about the recurring revenue in this type of a model that you're building.
Right.
So it will depend, but it's going to be very specific, as I said, to that industry that you're in, not necessarily. Again, I keep coming back to a comparable. Like if you're raising money and you look like a SaaS business, compare yourself to other SaaS businesses in your category, and then see what they did, and look on PitchBook, look on AngelList, talk to other people, talk to other investors, talk to other entrepreneurs, and find out kind of where they were revenue-wise when they raised money, which would be very, very different than, you know, a business over here that's in food delivery or consumer-facing versus enterprise will have different revenue expectations and things like that.
Great. Thank you. So Fabien, let's again go back in our time machine. We'll get more current in a bit, but just thinking about again that those initial pitches from your first round of financing to your second. What are some of the things that you did differently, you know, to increase your ability to get that, you know, meeting, you know, to get the second meeting, right, which is the meeting that you really want to get to at a minimum with investors? What are some of the different things that you learned from the first time that you that you used in the next time you raised money?
Yeah, it's a great question, Sandy. I think the part that, first of all, to the overall, I feel you always take more time or money than you think. Like it's rare that you do it like faster and have the money you raise to deliver. It can happen, but you always have more unknowns than the one you're expecting. So I think that's a good rule of thumb to put that buffer anyhow. And the second piece, I think, is to be very strategic. And if you can try to map out what kind of the piece you're trying to achieve on each round you're doing, so your seed, your A, and your B, and go backward from there and say, well, this is roughly, like imagine you're getting a boat from A to D, what kind of the different kind of base you want to achieve, and what kind of revenue level, de-risking level you want to have done to make sure that you get to the final. Because really funding is only a means to an end to get somewhere for your company to be profitable and successful. And so if you can map out that journey and try to think about strategically about what investors are not only wanting to see at each round, because each domain will have different metrics that they're looking for. And second to that also is understand what the VCs are seeing from their standpoint, because if the market is booming, there's a lot of companies created, then you understand how to differentiate yourself as well. So trying to see the world from their lens, I think is really important too. And so fundraising is always happening. I think like you always fundraise, you know, as an entrepreneur and a CEO, you don't do just every 18 months and say, hey, I'm ready to fundraise people. It's really all the time. You cultivate a network, you explain how much you deliver on your KPIs, what risk you had, how you addressed it, and so forth. I think that's really important. And another piece I think that was interesting in how to really engage with investors, really who are the partners in building your business with you, is also understand that most of the time, I don't know if Stephen and Angela will second that, but a lot of the questions I had, they think about in their head, like, what are the reasons for not to invest? And so if you can really think about it yourself as an entrepreneur, think, if I were in their shoes, what would be the reason for not to invest? And then you pitch on how you address those questions. Make sure you put that, you know, at the forefront of your conversation and be upfront about it. You have those conversations and how you mitigate those risks. I think you build trust. And I really think that one of the key values to really build great businesses and build great relations with your investors is really around that trust level, because it's never going to be always rosy. There'll be always some issues. And then that's why I understand the assumption that you're trying to achieve and build that trust around working together, those assumptions and those problems, I think is very important to grow from round to round.
Terrific. Okay, now let's get to this, the other part, another part of fundraising, which is when they get that second meeting. And that's when you're probably going to, investors may expect more granular, you know, a more granular look at the financials and really the business fundamentals, really drilling down on that. You know, how much information do you want to see? How much is in slides? Do you want, you know, handouts with spreadsheets? I mean, help us understand sort of from, you know, how you'd like to experience and receive information. Let's see, let's start with Steve this time and then we'll go to Angela.
So typically is if it does depend on the stage. If it's a very early stage, which we're early, but we're like in the mid to late stage of early, which I know it sounds funny. It's like how you have all these specializations. But if you're super early, I would prefer it not in the slide deck, right? I would prefer, you know, shooting over, you know, the basic information that I need, you know, in pretty much Excel or Word or PDF format, right? And again, you know, it's relatively simple to what I described before. It's not like I'm looking for these like P&L statements that have been audited. I mean, how could you even have a P&L statement at the super early stage? You have no money, so the P&L is zero, right? Like we get it, right? But it's going to be mostly, again, the pro forma, unless you've got a little bit. You know, if you have a little bit of revenue and activity and customers, you're probably more of like a later seed stage, and then our expectations are a little different. And I typically, in that proverbial if that first meeting was like a quick introduction or demo day, and then that second meeting, we tend to get to know the company more and their plans for the future, their plans for the product, their story, the company story. We don't really dive into the financials in that quote second meeting. What we typically do is ask for access to then, like if they have a data room, which a lot of, you know, these early stage companies do, because I mean, a data room is a fancy thing for a Dropbox or a Box or Google Drive folder with a few documents in it. And then we kind of look at that on our own and then ask them questions on it, right? And again, you know, for us, you know, it just keeps coming down to like a model, right? You know, show me your model with all your assumptions, right? And these models, you don't have to go to business school to do these models, right? You can pretty much crank them out after Googling for an hour and then, you know, putting some time into it, right? So in essence, a lot of times we do get shared. The models are usually as GDocs, right? So they'll just share us the link. I don't really have a super strong preference, because if we really want to dive into on our own, if it's something, we'll make our own model anyway. So like, I don't necessarily need something super, super fancy. Like, you know, it's just really those kind of pro forma financials with those assumptions, you know, either quarterly or annually, right? You know, like where you think the revenue and the expense will be broken down by the loose category of revenue, and then loose category of expense.
Terrific. Angela?
Yeah, I think we're somewhat similar. We try to be accessible and not, you know, we're investing in a lot of companies, initially small amounts. We have nothing to gain by making them run through too many hoops, you know, that don't fit their stage. The one thing, though, a great tool that I love to see entrepreneurs have at any stage is some sort of model. It can be very simple. Again, I'm kind of going on the assumption that it's not the accountant building the company. Very few lawyers and accountants have the risk appetite to be entrepreneurs. Some do, but you know, you're probably going to have to get a buddy to help you build it, or you know, learn online, whatever. Or maybe you have mad Excel skills and you're just going to do it. But what I like is when somebody has available to them that they understand a pretty simple model where they can plug different values in. And that tells me that, look, maybe someone else built it, but they understand the interactivity of the key drivers, and that they understand that they can change one thing and get a different result. So I think that's just a simple, great tool for anyone to walk away with, and even to walk into your investor meetings with. I've had entrepreneurs say, why don't I shoot you the model and you can play with it yourself? You know what? I probably open it, put in a different number and go, gosh, it does work, and then close it. It isn't that I have all the answers or I'm going to drive that business. It's that I know that entrepreneur has the optionality and the base understanding that they need at that stage. And that I will insist on. So that's just one way they can show me that. So that's a fancy trick. I used to actually, before I started Portland Seed Fund, I advised companies. And one thing that I did do was I hired someone to build very simple books for these founding entrepreneurs that they could play with and actually learn to understand the interactivity of all the pieces of their business. And it was pulling a lot of, you know, data from lots of places, but they were just looking at, you know, 10 cells. So that's my best trick.
Great. That's nice and simple, right? I think that is a great approach. So let's shift to board meetings. And so, you know, board meetings are starting to happen, hopefully before, you know, hopefully you're at least have the discipline of meeting at minimum quarterly with your advisors, if you don't have yet investors, but to start that structure, right, of governance for your company. But another question around financials that a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with is, you know, this may well be the first board experience that they've had. And so how should they approach presenting, not only presenting the financials, because that's, you know, that's sort of data, right? Hopefully presented in a clear and compelling manner. But what else should be happening with respect to, what should the discussions around financials in a board meeting, what should that look like for an early stage company? You know, and we can talk pre-revenue, post-revenue, that sort of thing. Angela, can you start us off with that?
Sure. We, as early stage investors, we know we're investing in entrepreneurs that have never run a board meeting. And our model is not to take board seats. So we feel that our best value can almost be the executive coach to the entrepreneur. We don't want to take over for them. We want to empower them to do the job and kill it, right? So we're more likely to sort of be their Cyrano de Bergerac in the bushes, whispering some things that they might be wanting to say to their board. They have to be true, but also equipping them with a templated deck that seems to work well for board meetings. And of course, there's lots of variation, and they're all good, but it's a good starting point. In fact, we go so far in that we've done enough investments that we've been able to analyze our own data set for, correlation with certain variables. And we don't find much except existence of a board matters.
Yeah.
We get better performance with companies that have a board than don't. And if you're cringing in your seat, founders, let me just say a couple things. A lot of that is fear of the unknown, fear of something you may not be good at. You can get good at this. You can do this. It's important. Again, it's part of being involved and caring about the real crown jewels of your business. So you need to step up on that. 2, the best case is to practice before your investors are going to compel you to form a formal board. I would highly recommend, whatever your kitchen cabinet or few advisors are, that you gradually get yourself into the discipline as if you are preparing for a board meeting with them. You don't need to do it, but you know what? If you tackle one skill a month when nobody is on your back, you're going to have a much smoother transition into that. So that's kind of the advice we give. Even if you don't have to, do it anyway. Grow into it and own it, because it is a very important part about, a lot of entrepreneurs may not remain CEO as long as they might like to. Some of that could have been mitigated by being willing to learn and take on more executive function earlier. And again, anyone can learn it. It's step by step.
Great. Steve, talk to us about financials and board meetings.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, just first to punctuate what Angela said about boards is, I find that, companies that have a properly functioned board at an early stage definitely are more grown up, is for lack of a better term, and have taken care of all these things upstream, so then downstream they don't become a problem. So you have a function in place to grant stock options, to if you need to fire people, or you need, once the Series A comes along, all that kind of stuff. I actually remind the entrepreneurs, and especially for the ones listening, because we've been giving the encouragement to kind of form the board, is boards are about governance, right? Not about like telling you what to do, right? Those are bad boards. Bad board members are like, no, you should have attacked this market, this blah, 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 right? So, and then part of governance obviously is financials, right? So getting back on track is, I agree with everything Angela said, super simple, right? Like I walked into an early stage board meeting once, and it was, first of all, it's in person, which is pre-COVID was a waste of money, right? Like, and they were willing to pay money to fly me to New York, like a stipend of $800. I'm like, usually, a company that just raised $2 million shouldn't be paying board members to come in person ever, right? It should always be on the phone or, obviously Zoom call. Second of all, they did it at their lawyer's office, and the lawyer was like making sure we like did a point of order for this. I'm like, no lawyers, like you don't need a lawyer at the board meetings. Short and simple. As Angela said, here's a template of a deck, and it basically is, what we've done, where we're going, and then like, important updates, like kind of like devolving into a quarterly business review, and then, open discussion, which is usually just the CEO asking for some advice on something. And I actually use the word quarterly. I encourage all the companies to do it 6 times a year, every 2 months in the early stage. It gives that discipline. It comes down to, if that founder, first of all, the more you do it, the better muscle memory you have and the easier it will be, like that kind of stuff. But then more importantly is the process of preparing for the board meeting is way more important than the board meeting. I'll still make this argument that accelerators are worthless. The reason why companies get value out of the accelerator is every Friday you have that founder check-in in front of your cohort, and you have to actually demonstrate what you've done for the last 5 days, as opposed to like when you're like, off on your own, either at home these days at home or at Starbucks, working on your startup, you're not accountable to anybody. So like that kind of peer pressure. So that peer pressure, every 60 days to, put together the financials and, put together these like, 8 or 9 slide deck should only take about 2 hours of preparation. And I know you guys are busy, but those 2 hours are so valuable. It's 12 hours a year, right? So it makes a big difference.
Great. So Fabien, you've raised more than $70 million over several rounds of financing with your company. And so you've had quite a journey with your board. So talk to us about how your approach to your board meetings sort of evolved over time so that you know, as your company matured and you had different and in some ways perhaps more complex issues to deal with, to address at the board meetings. Help us understand sort of what your journey was like with respect to board meetings, and particularly around the financials piece of that.
Great question, Sunny. I think, of course, the more money put in the company and the more complex the organization becoming, the more kind of oversight and the more like complex the boards are becoming. That's fairly common. I would say that some themes, though, although all the stages remain, I think, very consistent. Part of one, I think I've seen people doing when we start, I think if you really want to understand the board and how you function and you've never done it before, it might be good sometime when you build your advisory board or people you let yourself be advised by. I think get some former CEOs that have done it. And I think that's really usually a good idea because they will just be able to role play it once or twice, give you advice on how it went, and I think demystify it in a way that you get better prepared. And back to Angela's point, to be able to also to show better leadership and position yourself well in front of your board members. So I think that'd be one part. I think that was really important, I think, for me and how I worked with my board was really about this notion of like, what are we learning every time? And what are the assumptions we're getting and what are the risks we're having? And I think, again, it's back to that trust. So some of those CEO and other VCs that I've talked to said, look, some of that board is really always great news for 75% of it. And at the end, it's still, well, we have these issues and so forth. And I think that's really not the right approach. I would say I would put all, in my case, I think I always started with this slide that kind of recap the positive effect and the risk we're taking or the issues we've been having from the get-go. Because then I think you really want the board to have like governance, of course, back to Stephen's points, but also meaningful conversation. And what you have to understand is that they're coming in, new investors, every 3 or 2 months. I mean, most of my board were every 3 months, and they've seen 100 companies and 100 situations in that 3 months. You've been like sleeping and drinking every day your company. And so you don't realize where you left them. And I think it's really important to really start going in one step back. And I think that's why the process of doing the board slides and the board preparation is so important, because you just extract yourself a little bit from the day to day and put you back, okay, where were they? What we say we would do? What have we accomplished? Where are we on our storyline? How can we make them understand and reconnect with what we've done last 3 months? So again, it's trying to really put yourself in their shoes and try to make sure that they can reconnect the wagon to have a really interesting conversation with you. One part also, what for me, I think early on and later on also as well, is really the cash flow part of the financials. Like really, cash is king. And in a SaaS business, sometimes you have revenue that can have delays in being recognized and being cashed into the bank. And so I think really managing your cash flow piece and be very transparent about where do you see risk around that, and really leverage the board to give you like sometime sounding advice at when should you mitigate those and how you see those risks coming and how you're going to plan for that. If you want to move earlier your fundraise for next round, or should you have more, or can you just do some debt or whatever mechanism it is, but really understanding your cash flow, I think, is extremely important, and drive some of the good conversation. And back to your previous point, you were mentioning around your growth of your company for your boards. I think having a low conservative scenario, a medium and a high, and see how you're doing towards that to give you kind of the investor, okay, this is my base. This is where if all goes really badly, this is what I'm going to get. But if there's really those multiplier effect that we're talking from Angela about can drive the business growth to the medium or higher scale factors. And I think reconnect to those really fundamental drivers on what really affect the business, I think are really usually very interesting conversation that I had with my boards.
Terrific. Wow. Well, tons of great information, not only in that exchange on boards, but throughout. Believe it or not, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can check out our poll. Okay, so let's see what people said. Where do people have the least confidence with startup financials? Readiness for investor diligence. All right. So yeah, so Steve or Angela, do you want to just, given that, do you want to just add a comment, one of you, about on that point about how to prepare for your first experience with investor diligence? Fabien too, you've been through it.
Just a simple tip. Again, anything that you know is going to be stressful, de-stress it by making a Google folder or a Dropbox. It can be that simple. And just commit to uploading a document every couple of days. And then, you know, you'll get asked for a few things from investors that aren't already in there, but you can lather, rinse, repeat that over time.
Great. Let's see. Which best describes your approach to developing your startup's financial forecast? Most popular response was, I or our team performed a detailed examination of our business activities and needs. Okay, good. That sounds good versus, but so that's 58%, but 42%, which is sort of, I think a lot of people are pretty honest here. That's good. Are, you know, did back of the napkin estimates. So that's not a surprise, I think, to anybody. Because, you know, some of it is just early on, you're using your best guess. And then finally, how often does your company report and review your financials? How often are you looking at that? And so, you know, varies. So about half of you said that it sounds like there's not really a regular process for doing that, and that you're that's occurring mostly as you prepare for fundraising. So that, again, I love that we have some honest people here. But I think, you know, COVID certainly, but even if we're not in the craziness of COVID, you know, Angela, I think at the outset really made a very clear, compelling statement about how important it is to be all over your financials, to understand them from what you know and what you don't know. And so if you're not doing that on a regular basis with some structure around it, that's going to make things more challenging. And, you know, I will tell you that, you know, one of the other reasons, even pre-revenue, to start that board activity, another thing is that it actually, if you put some good communications in place with your advisors, even if it's not formally a board yet, that helps you tremendously when you're fundraising, because your advisors probably have equity in your company. They're incentivized to help with fundraising. And so these are people that are going to help you build the company, help advise you along the way. And they have skin in the game, right? They're giving their time for some equity and so forth. So a board, the discipline of a regular board meeting really helps you to leverage those people. So again, board. I think we got it. So one of the things that I'll just highlight, I took a few notes, and one is to show some financial models with your assumptions, and also speak to what you don't yet know, and what you're at the moment identifying as your risks with your business and your finance and your assumptions. I love Angela's example of the importance of a tool, a simple tool that'll help you with the modeling, and that you can plug in different values of that. And then I think we've, you know, we've drawn an underline about the data is there for early stage companies, ultimately that they have better performance when they have boards. So super important. let's see. So we wanted to let you know that we have actually launched an online course and one about sort of startup essentials. One of the things that we're going to be covering with this course is really to help you build your financial model from the ground up. And again, we're doing that just because as we engage with Runway member companies and others on events like this, we just see that fundraising obviously is a real critical need for everybody. So we're just feeling it's very important to provide quality resources on those fronts for entrepreneurs. So with that, please thank you, all of you who are joined us today on this call. And we, as I mentioned, we will be sending out a recording to everybody. Usually takes within about 2 to 3 days, usually 2. And we'll share that with you. And please also, most importantly, help me thank my fabulous panel, Angela, Steve, and Fabien. Really terrific perspectives. I took lots of notes. And also thank you to Manny Oriana from my team for helping to run things behind the scenes. So with that, everybody, I'm going to stay online. Judges, if you want to stay on for just a couple minutes, but all the participants, thank you very much for joining us, and we hope to see you again online soon. Bye-bye.